Untold Stories is a conference started in 2019 by Startup Europe Networks and Startup Hungary. We believe founder stories are powerful, and we pride ourselves on having real, no BS conversations to inspire and educate our community. Building off of our offline events, we developed this podcast with TechCamp Global to bring you untold stories from the region's best founders year-round. In each episode, we try to uncover the details and hands-on tactics behind the founders' successes so you can skip their mistakes and benefit from their years of experience and lessons learned. Our hope is that you will be able to find new ways to accelerate your growth. Let's dive in. My name is Mary Alcantara, and this is the Untold Stories podcast. Soma is the CEO and co-founder of Recart. Recart is a Facebook Messenger-based marketing tool for e-commerce shops. Recart helps shops tackle cart abandonment and increase engagement with their customers to drive sales. Recart is installed in 1 out of 8 Shopify stores and has over 200,000 installs worldwide. In this episode, we'll hear Soma's untold story of how he founded Recart to solve a problem he was experiencing as an e-commerce business owner, and found product market fit and grew from a spin-off project to break even to a growth stage startup serving over 200,000 businesses today. Soma, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
All right. So let's start at the beginning. So what was the inspiration for Recart?
I was an e-commerce merchant myself, running my own stores and running sales in Hungary and Middle Europe. And back then, for small e-commerce businesses, there were no really good choices for automating and managing marketing. So we had to build a lot of tools for ourselves and plug it into our own stores. And one of our in-house projects was reducing cart abandonment, which we completely built ourselves. And we noticed, how much extra revenue it makes for us. It was responsible for approximately 10% of our total revenue. So it was a huge bump to our bottom line. And as months went by, we started wondering, hey, why don't we make this available for all the e-commerce merchants out there? So that's the very short inspiration story of how Recart became a side project next to our own e-commerce businesses.
And at that time, there was no such thing as Facebook Messenger. So tell us a little bit like how the product has evolved.
Yeah. The first version of Recart was an email cart abandonment and recovery system. So what we did, we watched the checkout page for contact information, like your name and email address. And then if you have not completed the purchase, we reached out to you via an automated email series. And what we did really well, we haven't just collected email addresses on the checkout, but we also integrated with pop-up apps and other lead capturing tools. So if you added your email address on a website, like on a pop-up or a newsletter form, and you actually gave your permission to the merchant to send you marketing materials, we were the system who notified you that your cart was left behind. And it was amazing to see how effective it is, how small things can change the course of a purchase, and how effective it is just to send them a little bump, answer a couple of questions, maybe clear some concerns, and steer people back to the purchase. And so the first version was solely focusing on cart abandonment and email. And we started gaining some traction, not that much. I don't think it was a very, very strong product market fit. The product was really strong, but positioning and sales was not there. We did not really have experience with that, and we still lack of it today. And in early 2017, we noticed that Facebook opened up the Messenger API. And with the vision of becoming the go-to B2C communication platform where customers can talk to businesses and vice versa. So we took on it, and we actually shipped the world's very first cart abandonment and recovery for Facebook Messenger. And at that time, we were the very first company who did it. And it was like a little bit bending of the rules a little bit, because Facebook intended the Messenger platform for support purposes and support purposes only. But the use case was so strong and it was generating so much revenue and so much value for the merchants that Facebook started considering marketing use cases on Facebook Messenger. And a little bit more than a year later, Messenger became an official marketing platform, which decision we contributed to a lot, and I'm really proud of that. So that was the first step of the evolution towards the conversational and the mobile messaging area. And now Recart has turned into a full-fledged complete marketing software for mobile marketing messaging with all the use cases and more channels than just Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, so you touched on a lot of great things that I want to go into a little deeper. So you started off with email. So basically just, sending an email ping, kind of a, campaign around getting people to come back to their carts. How do you compare like the conversion to that, when you first started out versus today? I mean, is email still a channel that people care about, or, you've kind of moved on from that, but I guess you still deal with that with Recart. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit too.
Absolutely. So email is still the backbone of most merchants' marketing. So, and we are not promoting that email is that. That's just simply a lie. Wherever you see that email is that in marketing, you should know that's not true. And there are new channels that you can use to reach your customers. And many of those channels are more effective than email because it sends a direct notification to your phone. It drags your attention towards whatever the merchant has to say. And it's basically just 10 times more effective than just sending out an email. It doesn't necessarily mean that by default that it's a good strategy for you. Email is usually the backbone of marketing. Everyone expects to get receipts and other notifications via email. But brands are different, and they have different audiences. They have different interests of those audiences. And in many cases, those people expect to get a message on Facebook Messenger or SMS or WhatsApp or other communication platforms. And they're using these platforms more and more to engage with businesses. And that really helps adoption of the use cases for us as well. But email is definitely not dead, but merchants are in a new era where they have an opportunity to talk to their customers in a more direct and a more efficient way.
And like you're talking about, to customize the channel based on the use case. So depending on what they're trying to achieve, maybe there's a better channel than email, like what you're saying, but email is still, an important part of the whole system, I guess.
Absolutely. Email is still relevant for them.
And what other channels do you include in Recart?
Right now we support Facebook Messenger and SMS. And now we're working hard to implement RCS, which is the next generation of SMS developed by Google. And we're looking at the opportunity to bring in WhatsApp and Instagram DM to the mix.
Awesome. And you mentioned product market fit. And I think Recart is a great case study about product market fit, because you've said you found it actually multiple times throughout the evolution of the product and the life cycle. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was, in every single case, it was all about testing fast and learning from the results. So we were committed to do that. And we had many features and products that did not work out. And so first of all, you have to be okay with that you will fail multiple times. And actually you should expect that, because there's no such a thing that you're going to get it right for the first time, or, otherwise it's blind luck mostly. So we shipped a ton of features and we started working on a ton of projects that eventually did not work out, but we kept trying. We kept trying and we kept measuring our results, and with a huge commitment towards generating more sales for merchants. So that's what Recart's all about. We're helping small and medium-sized businesses to generate more revenue. And we just kept figuring out how to do that in an innovative and fast ways. So as I mentioned, the first version of the product where we took care of cart abandonment via email, I don't necessarily think that it had a very strong product market fit. In early 2017, when we shipped Facebook Messenger as a channel to recover abandoned carts and communicate more with customers, it definitely had a very, very strong product market fit. And here's the trick. We had a strong product market fit on the wrong segment of the market. That's something that others should look for definitely when they start to see their numbers grow. So what happened was that I think pre-recording, I mentioned that the Shopify ecosystem mostly consists of small merchants. And these small merchants usually stop using their Shopify stores somewhere in the first 12 months. And most of our exponential growth came from that segment of Shopify.
Growth in terms of number of installs.
Number of installs, revenue as well. So those merchants are happy to come in. They're happy to use your product, happy to pay $30-$40 maybe, but they stop using the product very quickly. So we essentially were fascinated by the growth and kept building more and more features that worked for that audience, with a real plan to move a little bit upmarket and find more sustainable revenue. More sustainable revenue, by my definition, means higher average revenue per user per month and lower churn. So your growth is more sustainable because customers pay more and they're churn
not dropping
less.
out. Yeah,
exactly. So what happened there was we saw a massive exponential growth that basically made our fame in the Shopify ecosystem, and that's how we became the number one paid-only application in the Shopify App Store. But we have not invested in moving upmarket properly. We were solely focusing on, okay, let's build a product that is useful for the merchants.
So you found product market fit with the wrong segment, and by wrong you mean not a hugely profitable segment that would be able to support the long-term kind of vision and strategy for Recart.
Yeah. So maybe I used the wrong word. Maybe I shouldn't use wrong. Maybe I should use that. I should say that we should have focused on moving upmarket on time and realizing that, okay, this segment of merchants, the growth here won't be sustainable because many of these merchants will drop out in the next 12 months. So we have to figure out, okay, how do we talk to customers who will be around in the next couple of years? So that's what we realized in early 2019. And that's when we brought in our first seed round to help us rebuild the product and reposition ourselves on the market, which turned out to be a lot harder than it sounded. And that's why it's really important to start as early as possible, basically.
Yeah, I want to come back to the fundraising topic, but before we jump there, you mentioned you're trying to move upstream or upmarket now. How is that going? Like, what are kind of the tactics? I guess you're kind of repositioning yourself, and that's challenging. Maybe, you can tell us a little bit about your plans there, whatever you can share.
Yeah, it's actually going well. I mean, of course, there were many months of preparation. As I mentioned, we started rebuilding parts of the product, which turned into rebuilding the entire product almost the entire product in 18 months. And, it involved, the process was basically, okay, let's talk to our biggest customers and let's see what they need. And it was after the first 25 calls, it became very clear that they pretty much want the same. So, but what they want is actually differs a lot from what a small merchant wants. So it became clear that, okay, that's what we should have done 18 months ago. Like, not just talk to the small merchants, but talk to the big merchants as well, and actually take their feedback into account as well.
And what do they want? Is this why you're expanding to WhatsApp or Instagram or other platforms? Is that part of how you're making that choice too? Or
yes, they definitely want better and less limited access to their audience on Facebook Messenger. Facebook Messenger is a great channel to reach out to your customers, but it has its certain rules, how you can reach out, what you can say, and when you can send that message. And so if you want, more a more free way of contacting your audience, you gotta use SMS, or you gotta use RCS, or platforms that allows you to do that. And secondly, they wanted like more vertical features. So they didn't want to go like horizontal and use the features a little bit. They wanted to go deep and integrate their messaging stack with other tools like rewards. I'll give you an example. They wanted us to integrate with reward systems so they can send out reward point balances in messages. That's like a very typical example of a mid-market. Or they wanted us to capture email addresses of Facebook Messenger users and push those email addresses into their email software or their ERP or other softwares. So they wanted to go vertical very clearly, and they wanted us to plug into all their stack. And that was very different from what small merchants wanted, which was, okay, I don't really care about customer experience. I just want to get the sale in, and I want to focus on getting that money into my bank account, and I don't really care about anything
however
else.
You can do it.
Exactly. No, it doesn't matter. If you have to send 30 messages, I don't mind.
If you're just spamming them until they finally say yes, that's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And is that part of it almost sounds like you're entering into chatbot territory a little bit, some of the use cases you mentioned. Is that something that comes up, or is that a direction you guys are going?
Yeah, absolutely. Many merchants of ours consider Recart as a chatbot, and we indeed have some chatbot functionalities, but we never defined ourselves as a chatbot. Technically, it is a chatbot, but we focus on outbound use cases. So we try to find the right time when to send a message and try to find, okay, what content should be sent based on the trigger. So we keep track of what the behavior is on the site, and we try to define, okay, this is an event where we need to send you a message. Let's say you abandoned a cart, that's a trigger. Or when you ordered a package and that order left the warehouse, or it actually arrived at your doorstep. Those are very useful events that can trigger a very useful message in those use cases.
Yeah, and like in the second one, when the package left, the smaller merchants maybe don't care about, putting in the extra effort for that, but it's part of the customer experience. Like you're talking about, it can be a differentiator for the bigger players. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to talk a little bit too about platform dependence, because you're on a few different platforms, but I know right in the beginning, you were talking about when you first were on Facebook Messenger, there was a little bit of a time when you had to kind of almost educate Facebook, what you're doing to make sure you don't get shut down. Is that something that continues to be a concern, or how do you kind of deal with this issue? Now you're kind of diversifying and planning to be on more platforms, but maybe you can speak to this a little bit.
Yeah, luckily that's not an issue anymore. And yes, it was a bumpy round at first. I remember them contacting us first in October 2017, and they were sent like, hey guys, you're sending too many messages. and you're off the charts. And that's when Recart started to become very popular in a very short period of time. And our merchants started to send messages like crazy. So Facebook reached out to us and they said, okay, you need to change this, this, and that, and you have 2 weeks. And
wow,
most of the changes were pretty much killing the use cases. And that circles back to what I mentioned earlier, that marketing use cases were not allowed at that time. So what we had to do is, okay, we believe that these use cases are very valuable for both merchants and customers. And yeah, there can be cases where the experience are not good enough to be on Messenger. And here are suggestions how to solve that. So I called them back. I showed them our data, our numbers, and they seemed to like our data-driven approach for figuring out what use cases are valuable for both businesses and customers. So let's say, I think our first type of cart abandonment campaign had a 25%-ish response rate.
Wow.
Not click, not open, response. And people were actually texting back the business saying, okay, yeah, I abandoned my cart because I wanted to see this, or I wanted to know how much time does it take to get to my place. So we showed them these numbers and they also realized, okay, these guys are onto something. And we kept the conversation. We flew to Facebook, their HQ, and we started these conversations. We did a deep dive. We showed them what we've got and what we built on their platform. And that helped Facebook to make decision to make Messenger as a marketing software in mid-2018.
Wow. And now I guess there's no danger of Facebook shutting you down at any point.
Not at this point. They're actually supporting many of the marketing use cases. So we are not on the edge. We're not in gray zones. We're not using any part of the API that is not supposed to be used that way. There were a lot of governance coming in the past couple of years, which defined how you can do marketing on the platform. So the rules are very well set. So we still have an amazing relationship and we still work on features in many cases. But there are no risk of these kind of events anymore, luckily.
Is there anything else you want to say about the topic of platform dependence?
Yeah, I mean, if you're building your business in only one channel or platform, sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's okay to do that and be completely dependent on one thing. But you always have to be ready when shit is able to hit the fan, basically. And you got to be ready for that. You cannot be surprised when it happens. And it usually happens sooner or later. If you're completely dependent, it's going to happen. So my 2 cents is, like, if your business tells you and like there's a good growth opportunity on that one single particular channel, you can use it to grow faster. But sooner or later, you have to start thinking about, okay, what can I do to de-risk myself? I think this is also something that I haven't started on time. So I should have done it maybe a year earlier than I did. That's a mistake from my end, for sure.
Cool. In this series, we also want to explore the human side of entrepreneurship. So what made you want to become an entrepreneur in the first place? Because Recart isn't your first business, so you've been doing this now for a long time. What can you tell us about your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is something that I barely think about. But I believe that I was always an overachiever. So I wanted to build something big. I wanted to become something big that people remember. And basically my journey started when I got accepted for college. And I did not really have the money to start the college, to move to Budapest and start the college. So instead, I was forced into start to work. And that work, I got a lot of opportunities ahead of me. And it's a bit of a luck as well. But I pushed hard.
What did you do? What was your job?
I was managing a restaurant, and a freshly opened restaurant. And that turned into managing their marketing. And that was around 2012, 2013 when Facebook came out with the ad manager. So you started to gain access to basically unlimited amount of clicks from people. And those clicks were really, really cheap. So I could drive a ton of people to the restaurant for a very, very low price. And that project turned into a marketing agency. I started doing that for many, many businesses. And when I saw success, I moved to Budapest, started taking clients here, got into e-commerce clients as well. So I've been helping e-commerce businesses running their marketing and driving traffic to their stores. And then I realized, okay, why am I not driving the e-commerce business itself? And that's how I became an e-commerce entrepreneur. And from that part, I explained how it turned into Recart.
The rest is history.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever go back to college?
No.
Do you feel like you might someday, or?
No.
The school of hard knocks, right?
I think in my case, it would have been a huge amount of wasted time. And I know that in many cases it's very useful, but in this fast-moving environment, in IT, where you build things, you're using systems that were not existent 2 years ago. It's all about learning fast, testing out what works, and implementing your learnings as fast as possible. And I was never really into the school system at all. So I think it worked out for me.
So you're mostly self-taught then?
Yeah, exactly.
How did you learn, and how do you continue to learn? And I don't know, are there people who you've gone to who have helped you, like mentors along the way?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting part of our story as well. When I started the e-commerce, the marketing agency I mentioned, and later that year, Recart, eventually, I think we are writing 2015, yes. We realized that the marketing community is strongest in the United States, like by far. And, it's 2015, 3 years ago, we did not have even Facebook marketing. And now there is an entire set of companies trying to build tools and trying to drive revenue through Facebook, which was also non-existent a couple of years ago. So it was a fast-moving ecosystem. And I think it was very clear that we got to have a presence in the United States because that's where the hub is. That's where all the people is. That's where the knowledge is. And I think it took a bit of courage to get there the first time, but we started going to conferences, and we started learning marketing at those conferences. And yeah, I think two things really surprised me when I first went there. First was how open the US people were about their results, their numbers, their own business. Like most of them shared their numbers with us. Okay, this is how much I make. This is what my profit is. This is how you can do the same, things like that. And I think they realized that that's when I first realized that this is not a zero-sum game. So if I talk to someone who's successful, he's not going to be less successful if he shares whatever he works for him, we can both be winners. And what was really surprising to me that even, competitors shared, like the market was so big and growing so fast that they didn't care. They like strongly believed that, okay, we can be both winners. So like the openness of US people and even the international marketing community really struck to me. And the second, when I started talking to these very successful, wealthy people, and when I spoke to them for 10 or 15 minutes and really tried to understand what they do, how they do it, things like that, I realized that they are not that different. Like before that, I had this kind of misconception of, okay, these guys are superhumans. They are something else. They are aliens. They are exceptional, very, very exceptional people. And I ended up realizing that they're just working hard. They're learning fast. And I have not felt that, okay, this or that guy is so much smarter than me. I definitely felt that, okay, this guy did it, explain to me how he did it, and I can reproduce this. So I felt really pumped that, okay, these guys did these exact steps and made hundreds of millions of dollars. Why wouldn't be able to do the same? So that was the two surprising key takeaways from getting knowledge from the United States.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you feel like, I guess it was important for you to go out and go to these conferences, but then you continued to grow and build the business from Hungary. Do you think that's possible for anybody to start, the business in their home country? How important is it to actually spend time in the US? I know you guys also opened a US office right before the pandemic, so that's another story. But yeah, maybe you can, share about kind of how you're still based here. What's the, how important is it to actually go to the US versus how much can you do at home beforehand, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Again, it depends. For us, this setup works. I think Hungary has great engineering talent. The pool is great here. You're able to build a decent team. And in many cases, you're even able to build a more quality team than in the States. And of course, a lot cheaper than you can assemble the same.
Why do you say more quality, or how do you mean more quality?
I mean that in the States, prices are so high and the competition is so fierce that you are highly likely to end up with lower quality talent in your company compared to Hungary or smaller countries where you can build your own little ecosystem and be one of the famous startups of the country or the region. So yeah, competition is crazy out there, and you not just have to have a lot of capital to hire them, but your project has to be very interesting and very motivating to them. So that combo really makes it hard to build a team in the States. So for us, like being Recart's, the entire engineering and product team is in Hungary, Budapest. Now we started hiring from other surrounding countries as well, opening the pool a little bit up. But basically, this system worked for us really well, and we're continue doing that and growing the Hungarian engineering team. Building the product here is okay. Your engineers usually don't have to talk to customers, so there are no time zone issues. They don't have to face customers at all. Product people, oftentimes they do, but they're not like they're talking to customers full time. So when it comes to customer facing roles like sales, customer success, we started selling to our upmarket clients from Hungary, and we quickly realized that the time zone is a big issue. So we moved the team to the States for a couple of months to sell from there. That eased some of our pain, but it's really evident that we need to, the growth teams who need to talk to customers have to be in the States and also have to be native speakers. In many cases, it does not matter. In many cases, it does. So it's all about what you're building and how you're building it. If your customers are big enterprise US companies, you better have someone in the States, because in many cases they have to jump on a plane and they have to have a face-to-face meeting. And that things get super hard when you're based here in Budapest. For me, I'm always where the company needs me to be. And in this phase, like with COVID coming into the picture, it changed many, many things. So I didn't have to talk to our best partners in person. It's okay to have a Zoom call at this point, so I don't have to be there. But I'm prepared that this can change anytime. And
weren't you just there last week?
No.
No. Okay, you were. I thought you were traveling.
No, I weren't there.
Okay.
The US team was here in Budapest.
Okay.
So they just flew out yesterday.
So you have your engineering people, the developers mainly in Hungary, and then the sales customer-facing roles in the US. But everybody comes here for kind of a team building once a year or something like that?
Yeah, pretty much it. They enjoy Budapest very much. So.
And how many people do you have in the States right now?
We have 4 people right now, and growing the team presumably by 4 to 6 by the end of the year.
And in Hungary?
Hungary, we 28, 29-ish, and looking to go all the way up to 55 by the end of this year.
Awesome. And you opened your US office right before the pandemic hit. Maybe you can tell us about how did your expectations change and when that happened?
That was an interesting story because I hired our head of partnerships, Nick, and we were planning out all the events that we were supposed to go that year or in the next couple of months. And I remember it was around late January when news came out that this sort of virus is spreading in China. And I was okay, let's look into the numbers. And based on the transmission data, it looked like that, okay, it's going to become a global thing. So I actually placed my bets on, okay, this is going to be a global thing. And Nick told otherwise. He was like, okay, we're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. But I was like, okay, let's just hold on those payments to those events because I don't think that they're going to happen.
Wow.
So we actually held back tens of thousands of dollars in event payments by, basically betting on this is going to be a big thing. And unfortunately, eventually it did. So yeah, we had to shut the office down. No one went into the office, so it didn't make any sense to rent it anymore. And I flew back from New York like 2 days before they shut everything down, shut the borders down. And I was lucky not to be stuck there.
To get stuck there, yeah. I love that that's your approach, your first response to anything. Let's look at the data. Let's look at the numbers.
Yeah, based on the numbers, it looked really bad. So, but everyone else told otherwise. Like, keep it down.
Everyone was in denial.
Yeah, exactly. The numbers were like, okay, we're screwed.
Yeah, but have you reopened an office, or is everybody just remote now, working from home? So
we started our approach like hiring the people in the New York area, and people are leaving New York now. Yeah. So it's going to be really hard to force them back into an office first system. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to do that anytime in the future. So we are hiring mostly in the East Coast, but we're opening up to even more west. But yeah, it was a short-lived project in terms of the office, but we don't really need office anymore.
And in Hungary, is that the same kind of approach? You said you're expanding, also looking in other countries, neighboring countries. Are they just working remotely, but for the Hungarian office, basically?
Yeah. So I think we were quite ready for the pandemic because we were already in a sort of hybrid mode.
Mm-hmm.
So our engineers were able to work from home whenever they wanted, basically. They mostly chose to be in the office, though. So they enjoyed the other teams and their colleagues' presence. So I would say that the normal schedule was like work 1 or 2 days from home and then work the rest from the office. And now it turned to the opposite. And now they're working 1-2 days in the office and the rest from home, or even less in the office. And they're not really looking to go back to the office. They realize, okay, I got so much more time, like 2 times 30 minutes equals a workout. So why would I spend my time on commuting? So yeah, our office is 25 desks for 32-ish people, 35-ish people. And we're never really more than 10, 15 people in any given day. There are like assembling days, of course, when most of the people decide, okay, let's come to the office. And on that past couple of weeks were just like that, when the US folks were here and we had great time together.
Cool. One of the other things you mentioned as one of your takeaways from those early trips to the US, how open people were with their data and sharing. And I know Recart, you guys famously published a series of weekly updates. Was that kind of what inspired that?
Yeah, exactly. So we were like, okay, we have some numbers, like what could it hurt if we share it with the ecosystem? And that's what really also helped us grow and helped us hire folks in Hungary and in the States as well. So I think it did a great job. And my position was, okay, let's continue this up until the point it's really useful to us and really generates value for us. And at some point, I think after 8 months of writing these monthly updates, I saw direct competitor, even CSS level copycats using my own strategies against me. So I had to think again and realize that, okay, this is not the best way to share our updates anymore. But the ecosystem, especially in Hungary, they seem to miss it. So we're actually thinking about, okay, how can we bring it back in a sort of way that it's useful, exciting, valuable, but not really giving away our cards to competitors and other companies.
Maybe just for a little inner circle or something.
Yeah.
Subscribers.
And I think I just realized a couple of months ago when there was a question in one of the Shopify entrepreneur groups that what did inspire you in order to start your business on Shopify as an app developer. And like more than a dozen people told or answered the question like, hey, we noticed how well Recart is doing. And it was super great to see people being inspired by our success. And many of them are large companies right now, or sold to large companies at this point. So I'm very happy that I was able to inspire talent to get moving with those posts.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to when you start releasing new updates. So let's talk about fundraising then. Walk us through kind of how has that been as a journey? And you said you did your first seed round in what year? You said
2018.
2018. Okay. So how was that? I think there's a good story behind this one too, if I remember well, right? You weren't actually fundraising at the time, but that kind of made the VCs even more interested. Like, oh, wow, these guys really have their heads down and they're working. So now we really want to get in on the story. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, exactly. I think I got a little bit into that part of the story when we were growing really fast, but on the long tail of Shopify. So I think, and we started making enough money to become, profitable. So we weren't like looking into fundraising. I didn't even know how that works, or should I raise? Should I not raise? How should I do it? I saw that back then, like, okay, we're making money, so why should I raise money? That was my first point of thinking. And then, I started to look into the data and started to realize, okay,
like always,
it's not something that's sustainable. So we really have to move upmarket.
Why wasn't it sustainable? Just because of the churn and like the issues you were talking about earlier.
The small merchants, the churn, not paying attention to upmarket, not building things for mid-market, not bringing in enough mid-market revenue.
So you were profitable, but you were worried that it was going to run out or not be sustainable. Basically.
Exactly. That's correct. And we started thinking about, okay, what does it take to move upmarket? And we started to lay out. Of course, we were way off, and expenses were a lot higher in actual than what we planned. But at least we started to have some kind of sense of what needs to be done in order to move upmarket. And that's when I realized, okay, we need money. It's not going to happen with our small profits that we already have. In the meantime, we have to, sustain our growth, continuously invest in that, talk to these merchants, and then start building something else or a version of it for mid-market. So that's how I ended up talking to investors.
And how was that process as a first time fundraising?
I don't think it went I don't think it was like too hard or anything. I think I got to talk to the right investors in this country. So we raised money from Dula Fahir, ex-founder of Ustream, and he's really bringing in the Valley mentality and the Valley terms, and really trying to be helpful for his portfolio companies. And he's really like been there, done that guy who can help us with many things down the road. So I was lucky to have them, and I also raised from day one with day one capital with a very similar approach was I think that time it was quite unique in the country. Someone who's trying to bring in the Valley terms, the Valley mentality to this country. I've seen otherwise from other investors who were really trying to dictate their own terms, which were not compatible with tier one VCs in the United States. So I was lucky to have them, and the process was not as hard as I thought. So yeah, that's how we ended up raising money and started rebuilding the product and positioning ourselves to the mid-market.
So you did the seed round in 2018. How much was that?
The seed round in 2019 was total of $2.6 million.
Okay. And then you just closed your second round.
Yes, we did a pre-series A of $3.5 million a couple of weeks ago.
And who was that from?
It's been led by Lead Ventures.
Okay. Cool. And some of the other VCs participated in that again. So they kind of put in some extra money, right?
That's correct.
And you had some angel investors also join.
Yes.
How has that been, or have you been how is it working with an angel? Getting their, they like to be hands-on, right? So do you feel like you're getting some experience from that, or?
Yeah, I'm trying to be very strategic at that point. So I'm looking for e-commerce experience in our market mostly. So, agency owners, other SaaS leaders, advisors, like very knowledgeable and experienced people in the industry. And luckily, many of them are looking to invest. So it's a great win-win relationship with them.
Any other advice or suggestions for founders navigating the whole fundraising process?
Oh, well, I don't feel to be in a position where I can actually give very serious advice. We did 2 rounds, basically. And I mean, for me, it was always about focusing on the product and focusing on the customer. So I think one of the common misconceptions are that we need to focus on bringing the money in, which is correct at the point where you already have something that works or barely works, or at least generates some trackable value to the merchant where you think that they will be willing to pay for you. For us, we were in a very unique situation because we were lucky enough to have a solid revenue stream before even the first fundraising, and know that many of the founders are fighting for the check that can fuel the entire pre-revenue phase of the company. So I wasn't there. I can't speak from there. But for me, what worked, that we always put customers first and generating value to customers first, and everything else comes second. And with that approach, we were able to attract investors. So instead of focusing desperately on attracting investors, what's really attractive for investors is growth.
Yeah. Were you, I guess, because you also said though that you were fortunate enough to already be from a profitable position. So I think you're right. That makes the whole thing easier. But were you honest with your early investors about the challenges that you could see coming? I mean, I guess that's what made you open to the idea in the first place, right? But what made you attractive to them was, these nice metrics that you could show. But I guess maybe, how do you feel about that piece? I mean, obviously, I'm not saying nobody should lie to their investors, but it's kind of a little bit of a game, right? Like,
it's hard to lie to them.
They know everything.
They're more experienced in numbers than we are. So if you pull it off, it's fine. It's okay. But I think we all saw the challenge. We all saw that what's coming next and what we need in order to grow. And I think, of course, we underestimated how much it will take to actually move up market. And, the entire 2019 passed when in early 2020, we started selling to mid-market merchants. And that's been going well. More than 65% of our revenue now comes from the mid-market. So I consider it a success. And we stabilized our growth, we stabilized our revenue. It's not as fragile as it was with the small merchants. I think investors understood the challenge, and they placed their bets on, okay, these guys will figure it out.
Yeah, they still saw the market opportunity and that you guys could execute on the plan.
This is a huge market. E-commerce is a huge market. And what's even more important, it's a huge market and growing really fast. And this is one of the only major markets that's growing 2 digits, so 10% or more year over year. And it's growing so fast that you're able to build multiple different things, and there are multiple different winners. So I think we picked our market well.
So what's next for Recart? What are your big challenges, or what's the next hurdle you're going to tackle?
So there are multiple challenges. First of all, growing the team. Like what we can achieve for that level, we are very much understaffed. So we need to bring in more people and start fueling growth. I think we are in a situation where we can fairly clearly lay out that, okay, if we add these types of people into the teams, we can generate this amount of revenue, like almost like clockwork. So we can see this kind of system. Okay, here's what we need to plug in and how to do it. So definitely growing the team is like the number one challenge. We're building the team, and the team is building the product and the business. I think we're also just trying to figure out how omnichannel marketing in mobile messaging plugs in together. And we're finding very interesting stuff, especially in the States, where we try to decide, okay, are we going to show you the messenger experience or the SMS experience? Or should we show you the RCS experience? We're trying to figure out your preference on, okay, based on the audience, based on the information we have available, what is the best channel to contact you at? So figuring out parts of the product is also still a big challenge for us. And the other one is like growing the business team itself in the States is particularly challenging inside the growing the team group. So these are our top challenges for this year. And if you're able to grow fast, I mean, grow the team fast, grow the person, hire the right people, and make fewest mistakes possible around this growth journey, we are ahead of, we're looking at a very decent growth in the next 12 months.
So for any of our US listeners who are looking for a job, give us your sales pitch. So what's the best thing about working at Recart?
The best thing about working at Recart is that you're able to build something that has such a huge effect on small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses. We are literally responsible for 10 to 15% of the revenue of those independent mid-sized businesses. And you as a professional able to work on projects that actually generate value for the company and therefore our clients as well. And also we offer a very competitive equity package because we believe everyone should be an owner in the company. So that's what, our recent US hires were really attracted to. Like, okay, this is a very nice equity pack that I can use to grow the business and then see a lot of value of.
They get to participate in the upside of what they're working towards. Yeah.
Exactly. So for the most important positions, I strongly believe that the core motivator should be equity and not cash. So yeah, and the team is, we spoke about that. It's distributed and remote first. So you got to work from wherever you like to work from, and you get to experience a higher quality of living if you choose to. But being able to drive impact instead of having a very small part of a large organization is usually something that US people choose Recart for.
And everybody gets to come hang out in Budapest in the summer.
Yes. So the Hungarian palinka is exceptional and everyone seems to like it. So if not for those mentioned before, come for the palinka. Come
for the adventure. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any closing thoughts, any final message you want to leave our audience with?
Nothing particular at this point.
Just stay tuned because you'll probably be interacting with somebody through a Recart system if you haven't already.
Yeah, if you're shopping, you're probably going to meet us.
Yeah. Somehow behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Soma, thank you so much. This was really great. Good luck to you guys and your team, and we look forward to watching your progress.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified when we release new episodes. Tune in next time as we continue to deep dive and uncover more hidden gems in the Untold Stories podcast. Check out our show notes for more resources about the topics we discuss and anything we mentioned during the podcast. Let us know what was your key takeaway from today's episode. And if you found this content useful, please feel free to share it with anyone else you think would benefit from it.